And are we recording?
Yes.
I'd like to call this meeting of the Planning and Community Design Commission to order. It's November 19th, 2020. And will the secretary please call the roll?
Rob Jurgel,
Rob is absent.
Carol Wagner,
I'm here.
Jody Rich, present. Richard Brophy,
Present.
Brian Lewis,
Present.
Mike Saunders,
Present.
and Tim Spiegelglass.
Present.
Okay, I think we're all here except for Rob. So I want to review our commission procedures for this evening. We are doing this on video on Zoom. And so it's a little bit different, so please bear with us if we run into some technical issues, but I think we have most of it under control. We will go through the agenda just as we usually do, and we'll begin with public comments. This will be on anything that is not otherwise on the agenda that you want to speak to the Planning Commission about. We have new business items, and then we have some discussion items. We have 2 items on the new business. We'll go through each petition. Staff will give us a presentation. We'll have questions from the Planning Commission, and then we'll take public comments on that petition. Then we'll move up and we'll take all those comments before we move on to the next item. Okay, so I think we're all set.
Carol, do we need to acknowledge who else is in the meeting?
Oh, thank you. I want to acknowledge that our council liaison is here with us tonight, Missy Wallman, as our 2 planners, Carlos Trejo and Jonathan Roper. Thank you, Mike. So we will begin. Carlos, do you have any public comments?
If there's any public comments in general, if you can identify by on the lower part of the Zoom, you should be able to raise your hand. Now, if this is in regards to any of the petition items, both the residential addition on Heatherwood and the plat off of Old Bonham, I ask that you wait till the presentation of those agenda items. So if you can, again, raise your hand, and I do have one.
Okay,
Bear with me 1 second.
sure.
Okay, Ms. Lee?
Yes.
Yes. If you can just state your name and
Hello. Good evening, Commission. My name is Jane Lee. I reside at 9366 Old Bonham Road. This is actually my first Commission meeting, so I wanted to make sure I was speaking to the hen limit. Should I wait until the discussion, or can I just add some comments now?
Are you here tonight to talk about a particular petition on our agenda?
I'm not. It's a discussion item. I wasn't sure if that was considered a petition.
Okay, but it is on the agenda?
Yes.
Okay, why don't you wait till that
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
time comes up, is that okay?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else, Carlos?
no, 1 second. All right, it looks everybody else is associated with the agenda items. So Chairman, if you're prepared, we can go to the next item.
Okay, so move on to new business. The first item on the agenda is 125 Heatherwood Lane. Petition type is a site plan, community design and concept stormwater management plan review. This is for a residential addition. The petitioner is David Zobel. The property owners are David and Wendy Zobel. And Carlos, are you or Jonathan going to do this?
Chairman, I'm going to see if Jonathan can maneuver through this one.
Yes, and thank you, and good
And
evening.
Jonathan, your volume still is pretty low.
Get back to that. Okay. And good evening to the members of the Planning and Community Design Commission. My name is Jonathan Roper. I am the Planner and GIS Coordinator. And this evening, the first of two petitions we'll have is a residential addition at 125.
Jonathan, I'm gonna,
Yes.
could you turn your volume up a little more?
Um,
Oh, how about now?
Ah, that's great.
Very good.
Okay, great. It's a petition at 125 Heatherwood Lane. It's a residential addition where it's a like an enclosed, a normal residential addition, and then attached to that is a covered patio piece. The patio does not exist, so that would be a new patio with a covering over it. It's about 1,100 square feet in total. On lots that are between 10 to 20,000 square feet. Administratively, under review of the guidelines, staff can administratively approve something up to 600 square feet. In this case, it exceeds that. Thus, community design review is involved, as well as stormwater management as well, because it's over the 400 square feet. And then site plan review is required because it's the lot. There's a lot width on this, and the lot. Oh, I'm sorry, the lot area and the lot depth not meeting the requirements. If we can go to the next slide, please. And the location we have here is at the end of the cul-de-sac at on top of a hill, so the street is lower than the rear area here. It's located in the Heatherwood Stony Side subdivision, and the property does back up to properties off of Ramsgate as well. Next slide, please. And this is the front street view of, it's just a Google view of the property, where you could see the property sits on a hill. The addition would be, it makes a T in the back, so the addition itself would not be visible from the street. You go to the next slide, please. And in looking at the community development guidelines, the addition, it's a one-story, which matches the house, which is an existing one-story house. Each elevation contains some kind of windows or doors. Its materials are a siding, a horizontal siding, which on the side of the house at least does match. They do have some type of siding existing on the house. The front is brick, but this would just be the side elevations and rear elevations, is what you're saying. And the garage, which is existing, you see on the left side there, that's a rear entry garage. So we did find that looking under the roof transition that the roof pitches match the existing. However, the height of the addition is a little bit higher than the existing house. It's well below any code maximums of the 35 feet. But staff just notes in pointing out the roof transition that it isn't like, it's not flat with the roof, but you can see in the side elevations there, it's a little bit taller. But regarding any type of, if we go to the next slide, please. Regarding any type of impact on any neighboring properties where the addition would sit, it's at least 30 feet away. I believe it's 30 feet away from the rear property line, and at least 30 feet away from the nearest structure. So it's not towering over any one property. Go to the next slide, please. You can see another elevation here where in orange you have relatively the additions location. Size might be a little off. And then you have that covered patio piece that extends right next to the off-street parking area as well. Go to the next slide, please. And for stormwater management, the property owner has, over the last few years, installed rainscaping measures onto their property. and this is from their plans explaining what their issues are with stormwater and the drainage patterns. You can see in the red and the yellow arrows where water is like coming onto their site, so they have tried to redirect it. They note a ponding area in the yellow circle, and which they intend to rainscape to reduce the ponding there. And they already have in that triangle area like a rain garden with some bioswales that move water to where it's going off site. So from a stormwater point of view, we find that water is being mitigated by what they're doing on site. And if we can go to the next slide, please. And that is it. There aren't any other recommended conditions of approval besides what you see there. And staff is open for any questions or comments the commission may have. And the petitioner and property owner is on this evening.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the commission?
This is Mike. I do have one question, if you don't mind. Jonathan, does this addition require the gutters and the outfall from the roof to be piped, or is it all just going to be handled on the surface?
It does not require actual stormwater, like on-site detention starts happening once you hit 1,200 square feet.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but yeah, they would handle it via the rainscaping.
Thank you.
This is Richard. One other question, if I may. I've looked through the materials, albeit quickly, but can we confirm perhaps with the owner that the materials for this addition are going to match the
Richard,
existing? I understand where.
Richard, could you turn your mic up?
Yes, one moment.
Sorry, we couldn't hear you. I couldn't hear you.
How about now? Is that better?
Much better.
Okay, great. Could we just confirm that the siding or whatever material we're going to be facing this addition with matches fairly precisely with the remaining house? I recognize we're not doing brick, but I'd like some confirmation that the color and size and texture of the siding is going to be similar.
Richard, are you asking to confirm it before we proceed, or or just before it's eventually approved by staff?
Well, good question. I'd like to understand from staff whether they have a current impression of whether the materials are going to match. And if not, perhaps we could invite the applicant to comment on that.
I would defer to the applicant.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, Carlos, you want to bring in the applicant?
Yes. Bear with me 1 second. Jonathan, who else is with Mr. Zobel?
We have to ask Mr. Zobel. Not sure.
Carlos, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Mr. Zobel. Do you have anybody else in attendance with you, or is it just your?
Yeah, Nate with NTNG Construction is on as well.
And Nate, I'm gonna transfer you over to a panelist so you can join Mr. Zobel.
Okay. So does the petitioner have anything they'd like to say to the commission before we?
No, I appreciate your consideration. We moved into Olivet, I believe, in October of 13. So I guess we're coming up here on 7 years. The house is great. We love the area, but a pair of twin toddlers came along 2 years ago, and we're without a basement. It's getting a little cramped in here. So we're open to put an addition on to kind of make what we characterize as a forever home here. So we're excited about the opportunity. And if you have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer it, or I can also address the siding question that was already asked.
Okay. Richard, you want to ask your question again directly?
Sure. Did you hear the question, or would you like me to repeat it?
Yeah. So the front of the house is brick. The garage area is an older wood siding. It wraps around the back of the house. Our plan would be to match the siding for the that are on the garage with the gables and with the addition, such that it would match all the way around. Does that answer it?
It does, yes. I think it's a concern that's expressed in some of our guidelines that we don't want additions to look like additions. The greatest extent possible, we'd like the materials to match. So I just wanted to understand what your plan was and just confirm that before we approve the design, that's all.
Yeah, that'd be a personal problem for me if it didn't match. I'd look at it every day. And so no, that shouldn't be everything will be uniform between the existing house and the siding on the addition. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Great.
This is Mike. Can I follow up on that question too? Because I heard wood siding, but the plans call off for vinyl siding, and that's a pretty significant difference. So can we just get some clarity on what the material actually is?
It's going to be vinyl siding. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that there's vinyl there, vinyl. Sorry, you can't see what I'm doing here now. And then there's probably about a 4-foot wooden right next to my front door. All that's going to come out. It's older wood. It's held up, but it's I don't know if it was cedar or whatever. It's past its prime.
So everything will be everything will match, and everything will be vinyl siding.
Correct, which is consistent with both of my neighbors. Actually, all the neighbors that have done have replaced it. They all have vinyl, so it's consistent with all of the surrounding houses as well.
Thanks for the clarification.
Any other commissioners have anything they'd like to ask the petitioner? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other comments or discussion? Hearing none. Carlos, is there anybody else who wants to speak on this?
If there's anybody in the attendee area that would like to speak in regards to this petition, if you can just show your hand, we'll give you a couple of seconds to identify yourself, and then you can, I'll transfer you over. And to the best of my knowledge, those that I do see only represent those for the next petition. And then Ms. Lee. And I will note in your packets, the commission did receive a letter from the trustees and from the neighbors in support of the petition.
Thank you. Okay. Do I hear anything else? How about a motion?
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay, Mike.
This is Mike. I'll make a motion to approve the petition for community design, site plan review, concept stormwater management plan review for a residential addition at 125 Heatherwood Drive as presented in the memorandum from the Department of Planning and Community Development dated November 19th, 2020, subject to any staff conditions noted herein.
And
I will second that.
so Mike made the motion, and who made the second?
This is Richard.
Richard made the second. Okay, great. Any further discussion on behalf of the commission? Okay. Why don't we take a roll call vote, Carlos?
Commissioner Spiegelglass,
Approved.
Commissioner Saunders,
Approved.
Commissioner Lewis,
Approve.
Commissioner Brophy,
Approved.
Commissioner Rich
Approved.
and Commissioner Wagner.
Yes.
Okay, so the motion is approved unanimously, 6-0. The next step in the process is for the petitioner to apply for the building permits. I will make one note, and I wanted to wait till afterwards. Mr. Zobel is part of our, is a volunteer member in one of the commissions and boards with the city of Olivet, more specifically the Zoning Board of Adjustment. And he worked diligently on this plan, and I think it does refer, some consideration or at least acknowledgement, because he purposely had redesigned this to meet the setbacks in there. And, this was an awkward lot. Probably would have qualified for some type of variance through the board. But he, knowing his position and his commitment to our community, made changes. They added to the expense, probably of the cost because of those angles. But they were done specifically to address those setbacks and avoid any, preferences, that someone would have thought for somebody who's volunteering. So, I do think it, he's pretty humble, and I think it does work, deserves some acknowledgement, and I thank him for working with Jonathan and I on that.
Mr. Zobel, I just want to thank you as well. That's terrific.
Thank you for your consideration tonight.
We're going to move on to the next petition item, which is Birdie Lane preliminary subdivision plat. The properties involved are 9411 Old Bonham Road and 9415 Old Bonham Road. Petition type is a subdivision. It's for proposed 8-lot single-family residential subdivision. The petitioner is Harry Friedman of Freeman Homes LLC, and the property owners are Stephen and Diana Estep.
Right. Bear with me 1 second, Chairman. I'm going to share screens here again. I'm going to take just some of this, talking about the broader aspects of this, and then Jonathan really has gone into the details of this. But there are two pretty lengthy lots off of Old Bonham that have been there for quite some time, in which there's on the eastern, it's just a bit east, a bit west, one lot west of Dealman Road. These two lots access off of Old Bonham. They're about over 90 feet in width, a little less than 100, but they're pretty deep. They go back at least 8 to 10 different parcels on both the east and west side. It backs up to a bunch of independent lots that are addressed off of a Dealman, and then to the White Rose subdivision on the western side. And there, I think the homes on the properties were built, I'm going to say, I think it was the late 1920s or it was 1940s. And there hasn't been, while both are viable lots, there hasn't been any major significant exterior improvements of which there was any records of them having to come through the commission or so. There were two independent lots. They are now under contract to be consolidated and then re-subdivided into a 8-lot single family subdivision. And we're going to kind of go over that process and then get into a little bit of the details. The goal here was to kind of introduce the plat and the commission, answer or at least get some direction on any questions, and introduce the developers and let them give them an opportunity to kind of speak of where and what they've done through this process. So again, you'll see Dealman Road running up and down here. That's north to south, and Old Bonham on the lower half of the slide, if you can see my little hand. And then the yellow lot are the boundaries of both properties. So there's two properties that go lengthwise along here that are accessed off of a pretty long driveway that actually has a name on the county records, Long Acres. Now I'm kind of rotating this, so now east is on top of the screen. So here's Dealman Road running left to right. Here's the south, that's Old Bonham Road running north to south, east to west. And then here's White Rose Lane, again running north to south on the bottom of the screen. And here are the two properties under the county's parcel viewer. So you can see, the property lines and the area also with an aerial. You can see the two homes that are nestled right here, almost side by side. Again, they're accessed off of one lot, or excuse me, one drive that extends here. And then there, you can see here on your left-hand side where the city bike trail, it's not shown here, but you can see the creek that kind of goes underneath Gilman. It's not necessarily a creek, but it is identified in the county as some type of water conduit that runs east to west. And you can also see another one here, kind of midway between those lots. And again, Jonathan will go and explain those a little bit more in detail and any impacts that they have under our stream buffer ordinance, because I don't recall, but I don't think they were identified in the USGS map, so we were cognizant of their placement and location when we were doing the review. And then here, and I think I apologize because I completely flipped this thing around on you. So now south is on the left. So here's Old Bonham Road. White Rose is up on top. So this is west. And Dealman is on the bottom here. So this is east. And I've imposed the subdivision into there. So you can see they're proposing a new street that would run north to south into the subdivision. And there would be 8 single-family lots that would access that roadway and 2 common ground areas. So preliminary subdivision plats are governed through Chapter 405, which is our subdivision regulations. And the intent and purpose for those regulations is to ensure orderly development, to preserve and protect and conserve value, to ensure proper legal description and documentations, make sure that lots are buildable, properly oriented, have adequate infrastructure and services, establish standards for design, and ensure beneficial relationship between the location and orientation of lots with the street system, especially for emergency access and maneuvering. So that is the purpose of why we have a platting process. You start with a pre-application conference, which is voluntary, and the petitioners did back in May. And then you proceed through the preliminary subdivision plat process where you identify whether those lots are actually buildable and meet the standards of the purpose of the intent of Chapter 405 and also comply with the city zoning regulations. In this case, we'll go through that in just a second, but we'll provide a brief description on each one of these in there. But in addition to that, we also have our zoning ordinance. This property is zoned SR, single family residential. We also have our strategic plan, though primarily dedicated for the Olive Boulevard corridor and our 4 industrial parks. It sets up or identifies our 4 community core values in there. So we evaluate it within all those 3. Our strategic plan goals talk about identity, development, transportation connections, open spaces. And we worked with the petitioner diligently to make sure that we addressed and talked about each one of these things and made sure that they were considered as part of their design and development. Identity, again, making sure that it's compatible with the surrounding uses. And again, this is a single family residential subdivision. They're providing common ground. They'll get into more detail in the ways and means that they're trying to address stormwater and fit the road and minimize disruption and protect and preserve as much of some of the existing vegetation that's provided buffers to some of the adjoining property owners. Regarding development, ensuring that this development provides, a balanced opportunity for additional housing in there and alternative housing considerations. Transportation connections. This is not just the roadway to make sure that it fits within our grid system or in our overall system of streets, but it also addresses, the non-vehicular traffic type of connections. And we'll get in a little bit more detail on there because this is one important aspect of the subdivision. They will be providing a sidewalk And in addition to that, they are cognizant of the city's trail system and how we are looking for this property down the future to be interconnected to that trail system and provide opportunities for other potential lots that would redevelop. And then about open spaces, they'll talk about some of the preservation efforts that they're looking at, and then also the common grounds that would be proposed as part of this. So, you know, the council has adopted our zoning ordinance and has established the SR district. And under that SR district, the council has by ordinance identified that single family lots in Olivet for new subdivisions, as long as they meet the minimum square footage of 15,000 square feet, have 100-foot width of front of, and typically that's a frontage, and have a 150-foot depth, that they would be in compliant with the city's minimum standards for a single family lot. That's not part of, you know, there is a variation process, but they're not looking to do so. They were not looking to over supply the number of properties or maximize the number of properties on this lot. When we first met at the conceptual level, just the staff, the preliminary conference, you know, looking at the dimensions and neglecting any of the criteria of infrastructure or topology and all that, they could have maximized about 10 new lots on this. In this case, once taking everything into consideration, they're only proposing 8. We even had a discussion about affordability and alternative housing in there, but that would require rezoning. And we discussed what some of the obstacles and hurdles would be to try to do that. And there, in the end, the result, they've come in with an 8-lot subdivision on the property grounds in compliant with the SR single family residential zoning district. Going back to the purpose of the intent, orderly development is based on the SR single family residential district minimum standards, which each of the 8 lots would meet. They protect and conserve as you look at the setback requirements and some of the other aspects that they're providing regarding their buffers and all that. The legal descriptions and documentation will be conducted through the final plat. These lots we've reviewed, and I think you see illustrations of potential homes that could fit within those and make sure that they're buildable. We even look to the extent of what other type of accessory structures could be incorporated on these lots. And then we've gone over the design standards, which I'll go into a little bit detail in just a second, and then ensure that there's a relationship regarding the location of each lot and the streets to ensure safe access and maneuvering, especially for emergency vehicles. So once we receive a plat, the first thing we look at it is in compliant with the underlying zoning district. And again, this is the SR district, and as long as the lot has 15,000 square feet, has 100-foot width and 150-foot depth, the council has indicated that those are acceptable minimum standards for residential lots in the city of Olivet. Then the next phase is, as you create these lots, we have standards for how these lots should be, trying to make sure that there's as rectangular as possible. We have standards on blocks, ensuring that the distance isn't too excessive. The streets, both in terms of their length and their accessibility, requirements for sidewalks, requirements for utilities, requirements for easements, and going on that list, grading, landscaping, monuments and markers, common grounds, natural features, uninhabitable areas, monument signs, and I apologize for the misspelling there, and that there are proper indentures or associations with that property. And those will be analyzed in our staff report as we go through this process. Want to go back to, and this is a olive walkability map that Mr. Roper had put together for our community that measures the how long it takes someone in our residential areas to access Olive Boulevard. Olive Boulevard being our main street, our core street. And you can see in blue, I kind of highlighted where those 2 lots are located for reference. Bear with me one second here. So you can see these two lots, and I apologize in there, and I'll go back in just a second. But the shading of these show how long of a time it takes to walk from that area to Olive Boulevard. The darker the shade, the closer you are to the Olive Boulevard corridor. So as you see the lighter shades out on the fringes, it takes them a longer time to get to Olive in there. By establishing this, now we have a measurable standard to talk about connectivity, especially walkability. So when we looked at this lot, we worked with the petitioner, and Jonathan will probably go in more detail on that, by subdividing these two lots here, we were creating we were kind of moving away from that measurable standard, that this area here would have become shaded lighter because they would have to come all the way out and go all the way in a U. And what the petitioners provided, and you'll see as we get into the details, a access easement that runs through one of these lots to connect to this larger lot here that is not part of the development, but it's a lot that has some development potential. And if that lot ever develops, that easement will provide us an opportunity to do two things in the future. One is to provide connectivity between those properties and provide connectivity with White Rose and Bonham Woods to get to that bike trail. And all of a sudden, this method to measure, this measurable standard of walkability, we will make several lots, the access of several lots faster to get to Olive as opposed to that. So I hope that kind of makes sense. But this is one way we can actually measure or provide a positive rating of trying to implement our goals and our objectives. And again, this is the proposed subdivision. I'm going to allow Jonathan now, if he wants to speak on that and go into a little bit of the details of the design. And also, Jonathan, if you can talk about some of that connectivity, because I think, Jonathan is the creator and master of this standard, and here again, it's starting to serve as a way we can measure us accomplishing our goals, our successes. So, Jonathan.
Yeah, thank you. And with that, if I could share my screen real quick, because actually that's a perfect segue into.
You should be.
Oh, yep, I do. There we go. Make that larger. All right, so this is the area we're talking about. And not only would
Jonathan, right now it's there.
All right, there we go. So that was the bike map that we were looking at before, or the walkability analysis before. And then we also have the Olivet walk and bike map where it looked at different routes and how to get there. And this is the area that we're looking at where Long Acres is currently. And that's the trail. This is Dealman Road right here. That's the trail that leads all the way to Stacy Park. So in looking at that as well, there's also the connectivity that would be gained to access not only this park over here, but also Stacy Park a little bit quicker for all these residents back here on Bonham Woods and White Rose, but also possibly to get the Villa Park as well. So that's another aspect that would be a positive on that there. And let's see, I'm going to go back to should be on the PowerPoint now.
Yes.
Wonderful. This is the 8-lot subdivision that we have where you can see in the numbers, those are where the proposed lots are, and followed by 3 common ground areas. There's one between lots 2 and 3, and if you recall the map that Carlos pointed out, there's that stream that we saw right here. So there's that one low point. There's that one low point in the map. That's where that stream is right there. So they're actually taking advantage and putting a common ground there. They also have a second one, and the common grounds will actually serve as stormwater detention area for those two. And this is just more like a strip in a natural area there. Also, in looking at the plat, we do take a look at, in the proposed subdivision, of the surrounding properties and the surrounding uses and how this would impact and fit into that, to the surroundings. So you could tell by some of these lots, although they're about 100 foot width, they match, they are a little bit smaller than the surrounding lots on White Rose here. White Rose, as you can see, is a little bit wider, and it matches some of these properties to the bottom here, which is actually to the east. But some of these other lots are quite a little bit larger. Some of them are, relatively the same. But then we have on the other side, the south side of Old Bottom to the left here is High Acres, where those properties there, some of those might be an acre. So it definitely doesn't match what's around it. But we do go back to the what they're doing. How does that fit in with the regulation of the SR district, but also, the surrounding neighborhood as well. Going back with and this is one of the contour maps, and for the next presentation, we'll have the more map that's more color coded, so that you're kind of used to seeing the highs and the lows of the elevation. But and this is Dealman Road right here and Old Bottom Road here. The low points of the map here are where this yellow area is here. By FEMA standard, that's a special flood hazard area. It's what they call the 500-year flood. And that it's really an indication of there might be water and hazards there, but it's actually not regulated by Olivet or FEMA. So they show it on the maps, but there's nothing to take action on, or any regulations that we do have. There's also this, this is that bike trail that leads to Stacy Park, as we were talking about earlier. And here is also indicated blue here and blue there. As we could see by the USGS maps, there is not, the natural watercourse area actually is on, this is Dealman Road right here. So it's actually on the east side of Dealman, so there's no actual special watercourse areas, as you can see, like behind the green there. So now, but still, this area is, most of this area will drain eventually into this area here. And how does water arrive there? And they're proposing that the two detention areas, most of the, here's the two drainage maps. Here's the existing and here's the proposed. What they're proposing to do, so this drainage area here does drain, it does go this way, and this area here does drain this way to the right. What they're proposing to do is to put two detention areas that will take in most of the lots, and including, well, most of the development area, including the streets as well. So lot 1, 2 would eventually either via the sheet flow over the ground, or if it's piped to a sewer, it will wind up in this common ground detention area here. So there's a pipe that they have on lot, I believe it's between lot 1 and lot 2, or right here in lot 2, that will lead in here. Lot 3 and lot 4 will also drain towards the common area here. The street itself, you can see some of the inlets are the street, except for probably this point at the apron here. The street actually will drain either into one of the two common areas. So water that's generated on the concrete would actually drain into the common ground and then enter eventually the sewer system. We did also look at the sewer system and where that connects to. So as we talk about stormwater, is the sewer just an inlet that flows into someone else's backyard? And now you're taking, from 2 lots that are mostly undeveloped to 8 lots that's going to be developed, how much more stormwater is that going to roll over to their lots? Well, in this particular case, we did look at the sewer map, and it looks like all this is hard piped into that that area that also goes. It's natural in some areas, and then it goes into that concrete channel that's behind like Bond Price and Bond Hills. So it does enter eventually into there. So that's one of the conditions or the scenarios that we would probably, it's more favorable for us that it's hard pipe there. Here's so this side here, here's Old Bottom Road, here's the first 4 lots, and then here's 5 and 6. And here's the second common ground detention that you see here, where part of lots 7 and 8 will drain into there, along with this area here. All of this area either will drain into that common detention or this one over here. And looking at the other impact on the grading, so currently this area back here will not, it's draining north towards that creek area as we saw over this lot here. Here's that person see outline of their house. They have a driveway with a detached garage building over here. So right now a lot of water is going north, which is the lower area is here, and it will continue to stay that way. They do note to add, let's zoom in here, they are wanting to put in an easement. Find how to zoom here. They're putting in an easement back here. I believe it's at least a 50-foot easement that would just keep it natural back there. And you can see the footprints of their houses. They added a patio here, but this would be that buffer where they would to remain existing trees, and that would be part of the plat. Other areas that they look to, this area up here, they also look to keep more natural. This is a wooded area with tree lined. The disturbance limitations over there probably would be they're going to have an easement for sewer, a stormwater sewer inlet that's going to be used by the lots to drain into the common grounds. So that would also prohibit development going over it, because you don't want to develop over that. So that area should stay. That's it's a brush area now, and but that area should stay a little bit more whatever trees. You notice they do add the sidewalk on the residential side here. And there is also to the south of 13-foot common ground. I believe the code calls for at least 10 feet next to a street. So they are providing 13 feet there. And regarding looking at going back to let's see. Nope, I don't have it on here. And going back to the strategic plan, we talk about the connections and the open space. Well, we're looking at, they added here in order to reach, they connect with White Rose over here, they would actually, they did provide a 10-foot easement along their common ground here, and 10-foot easement here. That also is, that overlays also with a sewer pipe right here. We did ask for, and regarding the public spaces, that the common grounds aren't just depressions with rock or just some grass. We want something more scenic there, at least a little bit nicer. So we don't have official plans or anything for the plantings, nor do we ask for those. But we had a discussion with the petitioner and about sprucing that up to make it, something more in line with that strategic plan. At this point, Carlos, I'll defer it back to you, and if the commission has any questions or comments at this time.
Any comments?
This is Mike. I do have a quick comment. Is Long Acres Drive going to be a public or a private street?
That determination, not sure. I know the city's policy right now is not to take any additional streets. And on that, now this would be a brand new street built to our code standards. And in the past, we have made them public. So I don't know that, that's a question. The commission would like me to get more specific with the Public Works Director, or is it just a general question?
Well, I guess if it's going to be a private street, there needs to be, I guess it'll end up being its own parcel or something like that, or is this part of the bigger common ground? So I'd be just curious on how it's going to be handled. And what's the impact to the units or to the buildings, to the lots towards Dealman now? We've had this discussion several months ago about, are we all of a sudden making rear yards, front yards, and impacting the ability to fence those if they want to fence them or if they want to refence them in the future? How are we impacting those lots, that face Dealman with a street? And maybe if it's a private street, they're not impacted. So.
With the common ground, it wouldn't impact them in that way with the common ground there.
So the common ground is a relief point. Got it. Okay.
It's not facing a street technically.
Got it.
I'm curious, you mentioned in the future the opening up to like White Rose and others, which is exciting in the concept of, interconnecting streets and faster walkways to Olive. But I'm curious, would you have to connect with the residents in White Rose or connect with, how does that work? Or is it just assumed they can do that with the easement?
What would happen is that at this point, this property here, which is to the north, and it's on the right-hand side, 595, is not part of the development. But we do recognize, given its size and its access to two separate streets, there is a potential sometime in the future to be subdivided. White Rose is a public street, and there's a possibility that they could subdivide and try to put a single family home in this area. Now, there's a lot of topographical issues they'll have to try to address in there. But when you look at it from paper, there is a potential of creating another lot or lots back here. What we're trying to do is ensure that if that happens, we have an opportunity that if we can obtain access here through lot 7 here, that if in the future that pedestrian access and pedestrian access only could be extended as part of any subdivision of 595 to connect to White Rose, and with the potential of connecting White Rose to the bike trail. And this is solely just for pedestrian purposes, it's not a street connection or purposes. If this property never subdivides, that easement just stays in perpetuity. But again, it provides the city an opportunity to improve that connectivity in preparations if anything does happen to that lot. That answer what you were looking for, Mr. Lewis?
Yeah, well, I guess I recognize what you're saying there. I'm just curious, if, and this is obviously in the future, it's a maybe, but you know, is there a separate process where, I guess maybe because White Rose is a public street, it doesn't need to be included, but to your point, it's a walkway, not a drive, not a car access, so probably less intrusive.
That is correct. And we did look at that, whether we should consider vehicular connectivity along this, but I think that that's a bigger battle to try to do or to become acceptable. And again, you know, if they, you know, to some extent, the cul-de-sac kind of provides that limitation. And again, when we started off at this, based just on paper, there was a potential to maximize up to 10 lots. Now, once everything is taken into consideration, they did come with 8 with this cul-de-sac, and said that could have been either just because of other issues or that this kind of worked best and keeping that street a little bit more intimate to the subdivision itself.
Anybody else? I have a question I'd like to ask. Jonathan, on lot 1, the house appears to be turned towards the new street instead of facing Old Bonham. And I'm just wondering what would happen if we encouraged the developer to face that one house towards Old Bonham.
Sure thing. So Old Bonham Road is one of the more major streets in the city of Olivet. Of course, Olive being the most major one, but that's a major residential connector. And so with any new subdivision, we were probably looking for more street access off of Old Bonham and coordination, if we can, if possible, with the adjoining intersection. And we're not looking for more apron access points off Old Bonham. So in this case, they actually are restricted by access from Old Bonham Road, and actually on the new drive, Birdie Lane, they would be restricted as well. So as you notice on lot 1, their driveway is facing lot 2, and that's because where the apron sits, they would actually they're restricted to put it on that side of the lot only, versus anywhere closer to Old Bottom Road at the intersection there.
Hey, Jonathan, this is Richard, if I could ask a quick question. I think keying off of what Carol said, I'm not so concerned about the driveway. I understand the limitations we want to place on Old Bonham Road and how many access points we have onto that thoroughfare. But why couldn't the house be twisted and have the driveway still basically stay in the same place it is now and have the house rotated 90 degrees clockwise?
That's one item that we can look at, and this is the time to do that, because part of what we're looking at are also the usable yards as well. So the rear yard, the side yards. So right now they have I believe it's a 25-foot setback from Old Bottom Road, and their setback from the rear, which is up, would be 30 feet right now. And from the side property line, it would be probably around 12 or 13 feet. So we would have to look at what type of issues that may create. So what we can do, we can request a developer a footprint that would look that way, and let's consider, what would be the pros and cons of doing that. Because I definitely understand if you're facing Old Bonham that you would want a front of the house, but that could be one of the things that we can ask the developer to provide more information on and see what that actually looks like.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, my personal view, and I read through some of the materials submitted by some of the neighbors to this new development, and I think they echoed this concern that as you walk down Old Bonham, it can be off-putting to have a bunch of side yards with walls of vinyl siding staring you in the face. So I think my personal view is that we should be encouraging development where the front of the house with a further front yard is what's facing Old Bonham. That's my personal view. And I guess a related question is, I know that there's a significant amount of undeveloped space most to the right in this picture that we see. I guess that would be north. I recognize that there seem to be some grading issues there, but could we cheat the whole thing down a bit and thereby get more space between Old Bonham and the first house? Or do you think that because of the significant grade change back there, that wouldn't be possible?
There's two thoughts about that. One is, there are retaining walls. So although you might start getting into a pretty tall retaining wall, but is it possible? I would say yes. However, I'm not sure if you could just shift everything over, because the common ground, so you might be restricted with the common ground being the low point. So is it possible to shrink that the width of the common ground, so lot one absorbs that extra area? It could be feasible.
Right.
But going past that common ground, probably shifting the whole development, including lot 7 and 8, I don't think. I think the best way, the more, I would say the better way to consider would just be shrinking the common ground for that. Secondly, similar to, if the concern is, and this is just a consideration or a thought, similar to what infield Chevy Chase does. So if you're driving down Price and you have the like some type of stone wall or something like that, some type of more substantial screening, because I do understand the side yard, but is there an opportunity for keeping the house where it is and providing some type of more or less wall like they have there, and would that be a more acceptable? But that's something that you guys can consider.
Yeah, I guess I'll stop talking in a moment, but my immediate reaction to that is I think it's an interesting idea. I think in Chevy Chase, the houses for the most part are further away from the road. And my concern would be that I think the way Chevy Chase has done it, it's very homogeneous. It fits in with the area, and there's enough of it that it doesn't look stilted. But if we just had a stone wall just for this one subdivision, it might look a little bit bizarre. That's my immediate reaction.
Richard, I want to thank you for articulating my question as clearly as you did. Jonathan, I absolutely agree that the access to that site should come off of the new road, not off Old Bonham. But I would really like to see the house turned to face Old Bonham. And it means adjusting the lot lines a bit in order to accommodate that. I'd like to see if there's a way that we could make that happen.
We'll definitely discuss with the developer on that one.
Yeah, this is Mike. I 100% agree with the last two comments. I think that's a great observation on Carol's part, and I think it would help. Yeah, help the fill of Old Bonham. So great call, Carol.
Any other comments from the commission?
I'd like to ask a question. Can you, Jonathan, can you speak on how this works exactly? Is there a landscape plan that's with this before we give approval? Do we see the kinds of houses that are going on? How does this work throughout the process after this part of it?
Yep. So I'll tackle two parts in there. The first, the landscaping part. Chapter 405 does call out a tree density requirement. So it just notes the number of trees that they're supposed to have, and they are to submit that. There are items, the subdivision. So let me take a step back. There's this preliminary plat, which is what you're seeing now. There's the final plat, which is a bit cleaner, that just has the lot areas, the setbacks, and all the easements. And that then is also approved by PCDC and council. And third, there's the subdivision improvement plan, which is more similar to what you're kind of seeing with the with all the contours and the house footprints, which gives us a relative idea of how they're going to grade. Also, the landscaping, the tree density plan comes into play at that point. That technically is not approved by PCDC or kind of reviewed by you guys. And there's really no standard for landscape or screening under chapter 405 for that beyond the trees. The second part of that about the house and the review of that. So normally with the new house, once this would be approved by council and recognized by county as you know, the new subdivision, they would usually submit for a PCDC review of the house at that point. And it looks at the design, this actual site grading that they're proposing, and the actual footprint at that time. You know, I'll stop there. So based on that,
So my real question is there a plan to buffer those back subdivisions from this subdivision, or are those back lots going to run into these new back lots?
Currently the lots 1 through 6, so their rears, which is to the front, or I'm sorry, to the up, there is a tree line that they're noting they are trying to save. I believe, Carlos, that they did submit a plan, we don't have in front of you, that does show some of the locations of those trees that they're intending to save along the north there. The lots 7 and 8, they submitted a, is that it? Lot 7 and, is that it? There we go. That was the one that they're going to remove, I believe. The trees that they're going to remove. Lot 7 and 8, they noted they're keeping 50 feet of natural area, so they weren't trying to touch the last 50 feet of lot 7 and 8. The common ground, not sure about the common ground area because that's 13 feet. So how many trees would be removed? I'm not sure.
Okay.
I think more specific, Commissioner Spiegelglass, is that through the subdivision process, there is a requirement for the placement of street trees and public type of trees, but not necessarily for the buffering of residential properties from other residential properties like we would apply to a commercial development next to a residential. So that is based on the lot depths. You know, in this case, you know, these would be 150 feet deep. The lots behind it, I believe, also are 150 feet deep. They are looking to try to preserve some of the existing vegetation. Now, there are trees that are along there that are pretty tall. And then there's a lot of honeysuckle, which the city tries to discourage and have removed as much as possible. And, you know, that honeysuckle is always, you know, in the eyes of the beholder of something significant or something, you know, that they just don't like. But in terms of having, placing any, you know, anything additional between those properties, there is nothing proposed, and there is nothing that's required by the platting process under the ordinance. But that's why it goes through a commission process. If there is a concern in that it's open for this discussion with the petitioner.
Thank you, guys.
Hey, Carlos or Jonathan, this is Mike again. The common ground itself, what instruments does the city have to make sure it's kept up, especially if that common ground is acting as some sort of detention area, and you know, we want to ensure that it is operational or working as such for years to come?
There are two things. It's a very good question, Commissioner Saunders. Uh, Two things. One is, any of the infrastructure component. So if it becomes a detention basin or actual, hard infrastructure, it is dedicated to the Metropolitan Sewer District. They take over maintenance on this. Now, this is more of that common area that will be private. It won't be something that the city or the city residents or taxpayers would be maintaining. Um, the maintenance of that common ground would be addressed through the indentures. And that's something that we would want to make sure when we get to the next step of the plating process, at the indentures for the subdivision, and it's required by code, that they address the long-term maintenance on how the association would keep that keep up that property along with the roadway if it stays private, or any other shared improvements. Let's say like a subdivision light or a subdivision sign or so.
If it's a private road, do we have any say on how the road itself is lit? I'm thinking of all the package deliveries that happen now and all the other stuff. And do we have any say in whether there'd be street lights, or is that something that the developer?
Our code has minimum
developers
standards. The code has a minimum standards, and it does say that the intersection in itself, that there has to be a light. Now, it's not saying that it has to be a street light, the tall, halogen light that you would see normally on a utility pole. It just, it wants for the passerby or someone just to be able to recognize that there is an intersection. So it could be, and I don't know what the new term would be, but like a gas light or something small, or even if it was a subdivision sign that was lit with our architectural lighting. So there is a requirement, and I believe they do show in there that they would have, a small, pedestrian type of light feature, a low light feature, identifying that intersection. Now, as you go further down the street, that is nothing. The code does not require them to put any additional lighting on the street road, just at the intersections. And at this point, they're not proposing any additional lighting beyond that at the intersection of Old Bonham.
Anybody else? Coast, do we have anyone who's interested in talking to us?
Yes,
about
we'll
this?
have several, and if you can bear with me, because I have to coordinate
Sure.
on that access. So the next step is if there's no additional questions from the commission for staff, I am going to introduce the lead applicant, Mr. Faulkner, and then I'll let him identify the rest of his team, and I can bring them over, and we'll have the developer introduce themselves and answer any specific commission questions. After the commission has an opportunity to ask any questions, then I will entertain any comments from the general public. And I know that there is a hand up and has been up, but we'll introduce that as soon as we get done with the petitioner. So, Mr. Faulkner, I'm going to transfer you over in just a second here. Bear with me. I'm also going to transfer the developer, Mr. Freeman. And then again, if there is anybody in the party, and I know I recognize several names, just let me know. All right, Mr. Faulkner, it looks like your audio is on.
Can you hear us?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Yes.
Mike, is there anybody else? I brought in Mr. Freeman. Anybody else in your party to transfer over?
We also have with us tonight is Brian Jokers. He's with Elite Development. They will be the firm that will actually be doing the development of the site once we move forward.
Okay, so I brought Mr. Freeman and
If
and Brian over, Mr. Jokers also.
You ready?
Well,
Okay, yes, Mr. Joker here as well.
Okay.
now I did transfer Mr. Freeman, but I'm not getting any audio or video from him, so I'm not sure if he stepped out or not. Okay, gentlemen.
Mr. Faulkner?
Harry Freeman, sorry. I just unmuted. Muted.
Mr. Faulkner, did you want to start off?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. For the record, my name's Mike Faulkner. I'm Vice President of Sterling Engineering. Our offices are at 5055 New Baumgardner in South St. Louis County. And Mr. Harry Freeman, who is the builder and developer of the subdivision, and Brian, like I said, Brian Jokers is also with us to answer any questions with the development team. I'd like to first start off by saying that in the very beginning, we went to MSD because we knew of the concerns of stormwater in this area. So we met with MSD and we had this plan originally submitted to MSD for them to review any downstream issues to make sure what potentially was out there that we could look at. MSD did that. In the meantime, we also reached out to the Corps of Engineers on the one blue line that Jonathan had shown on the one map that was in between lots 2 and 3, which is in the common ground. The Corps of Engineers went out, looked at that, and determined that it was not waters of the U.S., therefore had issued a no permit required letter to us stating that that was not jurisdictional waterway. That common ground is unique because it also, being the lowest area, is where we're going to provide the stormwater management. We are providing 2 stormwater basins on this development, one in between lots 2 and 3 and the other between lots 6 and 7. Now, knowing the water as it was moving towards lots 7 and 8, what we did was we strategically set that basin there and piped all the water that would be the impervious areas from 7 and 8 and that cul-de-sac to that one basin. We reached out to MSD and we said that the backs of those homes, it was just really difficult because it falls off so quickly to the north of how to handle the stormwater management there. And we asked for a 50-foot stream sheet flow to buffer. Now what that does is there'll be an easement that will be recorded with those lots that will require that 50-foot stay natural, and it will run with the land. So that is to cleanse the water and to act as a natural filtering of that stormwater. The rest of the water from the homes up to the street and the street will be picked up in an underground system and piped to that detention basin between lots 6 and 7. Now, what we did is we reached out to MSD because there really is not a good outlet for that. they approved us taking that water and taking it towards Obanham to an existing inlet that's right adjacent to in between lots 2 and 3, and pipe it into the underground system that will then be handled onto the east. So that stormwater will actually be picked up, and these basins are the new MSD basins, which do detention, volume reduction, and water quality is all contained in each one of these basins. So the water will be picked up, held, cleansed, and then piped underground over to the storm outlet that runs adjacent to our common ground between lots 2 and 3. Now, the rest of the storm water of the development is all draining towards that common ground strip, and that's where our larger basin will be. In that basin there will actually be picking up all the surface water, will be picking it up and piping it to that basin, and then at that basin, then draining it to the east in the underground, current existing underground system. So that's what we really looked at doing, was trying to get our handle on the storm water, because we knew it was a delicate issue in this area. ESOP that went out and visited and talked with 16 of the home owners in the area and got feedback from them. And based on that feedback that we heard from these residents, we took that and modified the plan before we submitted our final plan. Some of those concerns were to which would be, I guess, looking at our development, would be the west side of the development. And what we did is we moved our grading back so that the grading would then be moved closer to the homes and away from, maintain more existing tree mass along there and save as many trees as we could. So that was one of the results of the meetings that Corlina had with these residents, and brought that input back to us, and we modified our plans based on that. Now, I know Mr. Freeman would be looking for the street to be public, would be our main purpose, is to go forward with that street being dedicated as a public street. Well, we would not like to have it as a private street, but we would like to see and investigate that being a public street. I know there's been some discussions about Lot 1 as far as turning the house. The issue we have is if you try to turn the house to face to Obanham, with all of the homes that you see on this map here presently, those are misplaced on there. Now, if we turn that home, as the discussion was going on, I took a look at our plans. By doing that and facing that home towards Obanham, that home will have a hardship, because now it would only have a 25-foot rear yard. It would have a large side yard, but only a 25-foot rear yard. So it would be a real hardship. Now, could we steal some of the common ground? Unfortunately, we would not have that opportunity. In order to meet the MSD guidelines and restrictions on the stormwater management, I could not move any of that common ground in between lots 2 and 3 due to the requirements and the setbacks that MSD requires off of the high water elevation to a new home site. So turning that house and facing it towards Obanham would be a very big hardship on that future Lot 1.
Mr. Faulkner, I'm sorry to interrupt just for a moment. This is Richard Murphy. Just
sure.
To make one point, though, there's nothing that requires there to be 2 houses before that common ground. It could be reduced to 1. And that would satisfy the setback requirements then, correct?
Mr. Faulkner, do you want to answer?
I'm sorry, yes, that would, but the issue would be is that would be the loss of a lot. There would be no other location that we could regain that lot. And as Jonathan had mentioned earlier, Carlos had mentioned earlier, this site could have had more lots, but it would have taken a lot more disturbance of the natural features and would have, it would have hurt the integrity of. And I'd be happy to answer any other questions. I think I tried to jot down all of the concerns that I had heard in the earlier presentation by staff. And I'll be happy to answer any of them. One thing I might point out is the homes in this development will be running roughly about starting in the $1.2 million, and the sizes of the homes will be anywhere between 3,400 to 4,000 square foot. And obviously, people can add other things and bring that price higher than that.
So if I may, this is Richard again. I guess I would say that I would strongly encourage you to think creatively about how to solve the problem of that first house not facing Old Bonham Road. I understand that from a financial perspective, it's a disincentive to reduce the number of overall lots. I get that. But at the same time, our role here is to make sure the community is happy with the development. And I think what you're hearing from the feedback from the commission is that the community isn't happy with that house not facing Old Bonham Road. So I'm forecasting a dispute. And I think it would be wise to take the opportunity to take a look creatively at how we might solve that problem.
Sure, we'll be happy to take a look at it. It's just, as you can see, the issue that we have, because there's also a minimum line, I believe by code, that we have to be at least 100 foot from the center line of Old Bonham with our driveway. So that also gives us a little bit of a challenge on trying to move that house. That driveway is going to have to stay pretty much where we have it shown.
Well, again, either there. No, sorry, Mike. Pardon me.
Yeah, I was just going to offer, it might require a unique floor plan for that building. It's the same setback on Old Bottom as it is on the new road. It just might require whoever's designing that, that house in the future to make sure that it presents its front to Old Bonham, and maybe the side yard is a little bit bigger than the backyard, but to me, it's as simple as just coming up with the proper floor plan for that house to meet these requirements. Right now you're showing the same footprint for all the buildings. I don't know if that's really the intent. I hope it's not, but that's a corner lot. It's a special lot, and I fully agree with what Richard's saying, and I don't think it's that difficult. It just requires whoever's designing that house eventually to sort of make sure the major elevation is facing Old Bonham. So
And I just wanted to clarify, just because I believe it was repeated incorrectly, the setbacks would not change. No matter how you put, the setbacks are based upon the lot rather than where you put the house. So to the, and Carlos, could you zoom in on that a little bit? Oh, lot one. The, so where you see the above number one there, that would actually remain the rear yard. So that would be a 30-foot setback there. And I believe that pipe may be just about 30 feet. So that house could not go closer to where that dashed line is going, just about. To the right of that, or that property line where the driveway is going, they would have a 12-foot setback from that property line. So they would not have, they could consider it to be the rear yard, but under zoning standards, that would be a 12-foot setback and the other would be around a 30-foot setback.
Mr. Faulkner, I think it will take some creativity to take a look at that. But I think it's an important change for the commission. I think it's a part of our comprehensive plan to keep our street view intact. And I think we want to try and do that where we can. So I would encourage you to take
That one thing that just came to mind that we could take a look is, I don't know whether the commission would look at favorably upon is maybe taking that house and trying to turn it to where it's oriented more towards the intersection instead of facing directly onto Old Bonham, but maybe facing more towards that intersection, which would still give it the appearance of facing towards Old Bonham.
Okay.
By doing so, that would still keep a fairly good rear yard to that home.
I guess this is Richard. I don't think that we're here at the moment to determine how that's going to be constructed, but I think Mike's point is a great one, that it really is just going to perhaps come down to how that house is designed, so that perhaps it looks like it has a front facing Old Bonham and perhaps the new road. But I think there needs to be some creative design there. My understanding is right now we're just here to assess the plat. And I guess the guidance that you're receiving is make sure the plat is something that provides some flexibility so that you can accommodate these requirements that we're identifying for you.
We'll definitely do that.
Mr. Faulkner, is there anybody else on your team who'd like to speak to the commission?
I think we're all here to answer any questions.
Does anybody else on the commission have questions at this time for the developer? Carlos, do you want to
Okay.
let in some of our public who have comments
Okay.
for us?
I'm going to transfer the Stephen, Mark, and Karina Estep. They're the owners of the property, over to panelists. And Diane Estep. All right.
We ready?
I'm waiting for them to, they're then transferred. I'm waiting
Oh.
For their access to change.
This is Diana.
There
Can
we
you
go.
hear me?
Yes, yes, we can.
Oh, good. Hello.
Hello. Did you have comments for us?
Um, well, I didn't intend actually to speak this evening. My husband, Stephen, are you here, Stephen?
He's been transferred over. He hasn't switched on.
Stephen, if you go down to the bottom of the screen, all the way to the left, you'll see a little microphone and you'll click on that. Mark, you might do that as well. Mark,
All right.
Mark is the owner of the other property.
And that is Mr. Jaffe?
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna bring him over also. I had him on the panel.
Are we ready?
Oh, I know Diana and Stephen. If
We're here.
Yes.
Diane, did you want to talk to the commission?
Well, again, I wasn't prepared to, to engage with everyone this evening, but I'm happy to answer any questions. My husband, Stephen, and I have lived here in Olivet for, 35 years. During our time here, we raised our two daughters. They attended Old Bonham and the rest of the Ladue school system. And I'm happy to report that they've come back to St. Louis, which we know happens to those who were raised here. During our time here, I, for one, sat on the committees for establishing recycling here in Olivet, and it still gives me pleasure to see all the recycling that continues to happen here. So we've enjoyed living on our property, but it has been a hardship. I will say that. And it was a very difficult decision, for us to make. But we really believe that having the addition of 8 new homes would be an improvement over what is here currently. We believe that the elite group, Mr. Faulkner and Harry Freeman, have done a beautiful job of redirecting the water problem that exists here. And furthermore, we did our homework to make sure that this builder builds quality homes that I would feel proud to know that that I somewhat facilitated it. So I'm in favor of doing this project. As I said, I think it would be an improvement. With regard to the lot number 1, I kind of disagree, but I appreciate any comments that the neighborhood might have had about the lot, the house in lot number 1 facing Old Bonham. If you look at White Rose Lane, the 2 homes that are on our west side, both their side of their homes face Old Bonham. So it's actually, it would be a continuation. And if there is concern about that, my feeling is that a green, some greenery in there would be a wonderful addition to what Old Bonham would look like right there. So, you know, that's my feeling. I think if I were looking for a home here in this area, I would not want a shallow backyard and a bigger side yard. I don't know. It just seems to me that the side facing Old Bonham with the addition of some nice greenery, you know, bushes or whatever, would be beautiful and wonderful. And it would conform with the lots that corner on Old Bonham and White Rose. At any rate, do any of you have questions? Again, the trees, retaining as many trees as possible is important to us. Stephen, if you want to chime in here, that was one of our biggest considerations. And the Freeman Group had indicated that they would be, in fact, very careful to retain as many trees as possible. And then another thing on lots 7 and 8, that area behind them is full of trees. It's a forest back there, and it's beautiful. And I'm so happy that that area will be retained. There's birds and owls, and we even have a fox that lives. And at any rate, I was very pleased to know that that would be retained.
Mr. Estep, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Well, I think she covered just about all of it.
Hi, my name is Karina Estep, and I am Stephen and Diana's daughter. I would just like to point out, piggybacking on the comment that my mother made, as you go down Old Bonham Road, many of the lanes, and I would say the majority of the lanes, have homes that do not face Old Bonham Road on the corner. And I believe that that actually is the trend. And I agree, being an Olivet resident currently, that I would prefer to have a bigger backyard and not face Old Bonham. Lot 1, I think, is going to better serve the family that wants to live there if it has a proper backyard. And to be fair, you want to conserve trees, and there are 4 beautiful old cedar trees that run along that face of that property, and along Old Bonham Road. And I just think that it would be a disservice to place a house awkwardly. And I must say, as long as we're addressing awkwardly placed homes, I think the top of Sleepy Hollow is a prime example of what not to do. That is an eyesore that's much talked about in the neighborhood. So I think avoiding another Sleepy Hollow-ish odd placement would be beneficial to the property values around all of Olivet. You guys recently had the development that Doug Cohen did on Lynn Court, and that corner home faces Lynn Court. So I don't see, I guess, the hang up or the benefit that you guys do. And I spend a lot of time on Old Bonham Road. I live off of it. I have lived off of it for most of my life, so.
Carlos, was there anybody else?
I'm not sure, Mr. Jaffe.
No, I have no comment.
All right.
Is that everyone?
Yes, now I do have now, I believe, adjacent property owners, if we're ready.
Sure.
Bear with me 1 second. Mr. Lapp. I'm transferring over as a panelist, and after that, I have a Mr. Green. I'll transfer you after Mr. Lapp's comments.
I need to unmute myself and start the video. Good evening, everyone. I'm Mark Lapp. I live at 515 Dealman Road. That is in between Lot 2 and the common ground. My house was built in 1993 and was going to be the first house of this whole redevelopment area. Those developers were not able to satisfy either the planning commission or the city with their plans for development on what is now going to be Birdie Lane. But I always knew that this would happen, and I appreciate the STEP's careful planning and meeting Karina and talking about my concerns. My big concern is the water runoff. I'm glad to hear that MSD is involved and has said that that common ground between 2 and 3 must remain that size. There is a lot of water that comes through there. That's why the vegetation is so thick. And thank goodness MSD required a sewer along the north side of my property in anticipation one day of a development like this. So I'm very glad to hear that the water is going to be controlled and managed and not be an increase on my property. A couple of points I have that I do want to point out. I don't know if it was an oversight or not, but the western boundary of my house is not as far as the eastern boundary of this development. The eastern boundary of the development could come 10 feet further into my backyard. There's actually a natural tree line. They're all dead now, but there's a tree line of that goes along as they have the border of the eastern boundary. But it's actually the actual, and the surveyor can speak to it. My property line is a little bit further to the east, 10 feet further. It's not reflected there. Yes. So, you know, I don't know if that's going to be ceded to me, CEDED, or the new subdivision plans to take care of that 10-foot strip. But I just want to point that out since the committee needs to make sure that the boundaries are appropriate. I do have some questions about that retaining wall and the fencing around it. I hope, I imagine it's quite high, probably 8 feet or just my estimation. I hope I get to look at the finished side as well as the finished side of the fence. And to the extent that this committee has input on that, maybe both sides need to be finished, but it's now my view in my backyard. And that would be something that I would like to see addressed. Also, I guess I have some questions about when construction begins. The easement that goes east-west that will, underneath of which will be the stormwater system. I guess it's already there. There's a number of trees to the north on the Beeman property. It's now has a new owner, but I trust MSD or whoever's developing that is going to save those trees on the north side. They're 50 to 60 feet high on the north side of the east-west easement. And finally, I know you touched on landscaping. Can there be a landscaping buffer to my backyard along those 13 feet? Can there be some evergreens or something nice to look at rather than those homes looking into my backyard? Also goes both ways. I don't know if that's something that this committee can address or not, but again, I appreciate the STEPs. I appreciate the committee. I appreciate the developer and MSD, and I'm sure you'll all do they'll all do a great job. So thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to address your question about schedule. We're only at the very first step from the commission perspective. So we first, before we go anywhere, we have to finish considering the preliminary subdivision plat and then we approve the final subdivision plat. So we're quite a ways from that. And only at that point does the developer begin to submit housing designs. And if we approve, only then can they consider beginning construction. So we're quite a ways down the road before anything talks about getting built.
Okay, thank you.
And Jonathan, I wanted to ask if you could just double check on the questions he raised about the boundaries.
That will be done.
Okay. Great. And did I forget anything?
That I'm aware of. So
Is there anybody else who
Yes,
wants
I
to
got
speak to us?
one more person, if you can bear with me. And Mr. Lapp, I'm going to put you back as an attendee. And I am going to transfer Mr. Green as a panelist, and he's welcome to speak.
Hello.
Hello.
There we are. Okay, my name is Mike Green. Can you hear me all?
Yes, sir.
All right, so I'm actually the neighbor to Mark at 535 Dealman, and I kind of have pretty much the same concerns that Mark has regarding affluence, all the MSD issues that will funnel through or between his property and my property. And most of what he said are exactly my concerns. Is what's the disruption, the damage, and I know that may not be answered today, but I do want to put it on record that I'm a new owner at 535 Dealman. I have some very mature landscaping, and I don't want to lose any of it. So that's my primary concern. And I do know that there's a very large retaining wall with a fence that will go behind my garage. And my garage, another concern is that it is up against the property line at some point, maybe I want to expand that, or, who knows? I want to understand what get more information and more direction as to what is going to happen immediately behind my property. So I really don't have a whole lot more than what Mark had said. I think he really spelled it out very well. We have some mature trees directly behind both of our properties that I think we both would love to see retained. I think there's a giant sycamore behind mine. I bought into this area because of the mature landscaping. And I do know that when you start putting in new sewer lines, that can be very disruptive. So outside of that, I will add one thing to property number 1. And I've been a developer in the past. I've done projects similar to this, maybe not at this scale, but I do know that if you're a home owner or home buyer of property number 1, that if they're combined with properties 1 through 8, that you're going to want to have some similarities and want to have some of the same backyard usage. I have no problem the way it's designed now, but I will say that I think architecturally, these problems can be resolved very easily with good architecture and, of course, with good landscape design. So I really, on the record, I think as long as property number 1 is designed well, and I do think that, if facades are one thing, and this is a 2 facade deal, honestly, for property number 1. So I just want to make sure that's on record. But I do appreciate Mark's comments, and I will have to echo those. I just want to make sure that whatever is done between his property and my property, that preservation is of utmost importance, and that whatever you guys decide to do is communicated very well. I think the design overall with 8 homes is appropriate. I'm not surprised. I knew all along that that property had to be developed at some point, and that's about all I got.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Any questions for Mr. Green?
Or anyone have any questions for Mr. Green or any of the other?
I may add a caboose, another caboose.
No questions.
We liked the caboose.
Yeah, I wish it was still here.
Yeah. So I have a question for Mark. Lap. This is Karina.
Karina,
Estep.
Easton.
if you just have a question for him, but you don't need to address the commission.
Well, I think the commission might be interested in the information because it pertains to the sewer. When the builder who built Mr. Lapp's home was preparing for the subdivision that did not get approved because they wanted too many variances, the sewer was upgraded with the development in mind. And Mark and I discussed that when we met a few weeks ago. And I just wanted to see if he had anything to add that the committee might find interesting.
So I think Jonathan is our stormwater lead usually, and he'll be taking a close look at that.
Just in response to Karina, before they put the sewer in, it was a river. I was a young man back then and couldn't believe I wanted to build a house and there was going to be a river and there was going to be such water problems. But I think it's 3-foot drain tile under there. And I trust MSD knows what they're doing. Yeah, it's not an issue now. Water is not an issue now. So everything that runs off this entire development. And again, there's a lot of vegetation that takes up and holds a lot of the water, but it all drains smoothly into the inlets.
Great.
And I'll note just real quick, Chairman, and we'll verify this, but it says that it's connecting to a 24-inch storm sewer. And this is the storm sewer that's being discussed. Okay.
Okay. Carlos, is that?
Madam Chair, this is Madam Chair.
Yes.
Can I get a name?
Who is this?
This is
please?
Mike Faulkner. Carlos, if you could pull up the last, I think it's the last sheet, it's 6.1 of our submittal is a blow up of this outfall that the two gentlemen have brought to our attention. I wanted to just point out something, if you could display that.
Will do, sir. 1 second. Is it this page here or continue on?
The other thing no, continue on. Well, actually, Carlos, you could just leave that. I think that one would be fine. That's displayed. I might point out that what we're doing and what MSD has asked us to do is to pick up the storm sewer that's discharging onto us from the west. Great, thanks, Carlos. But pick up the storm sewer from the west, and they're going to have us pipe it around the stormwater detention. So that water will be picked up and piped directly into the storm inlet at your western boundary line. And you see the double inlet that's back there. It will connect there and then continue on. So that water will be bypassed. So it won't actually go into our detention basin. We'll just be taking care of we've spotted your trees on both properties, Mr. Green's, Mr. Lapp's properties. We've spotted where those trees are, and they are represented on this drawing. And the line that has the little black arrows on it is the existing storm sewer. So we will not be getting any closer to those existing trees. And MSD is poised, has asked us to do some additional measures as far as when we're installing that sanitary sewer through there. So we'll be taking every measure possible to ensure that no damage to those existing trees. And that's why I wanted to point that out. We do know where all those trees are, and we've located the sewer away from where those trees are.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any comments for the commission? Okay. Carlos, what's our next step here?
Okay, bear with me. Okay. So the next step, is there anybody else that would like to speak in the audience area? If you can, again, show your hand. I got 4 attendees still on, no hands up. And if I can just have a second as I change the roles here. Okay, and at this time, if there's any other comments from the commission for staff, we're not anticipating any action to be taken in tonight's meeting. We appreciate the comments, and we'll continue discussion with the Mr. Freeman and his development team. We have sent out notifications, and again, we've received some comments here that were provided as part of your packets regarding the development, and they have been referenced and acknowledged in there. And Chairman, if there's any other questions, I ask that the item be deferred to our next meeting on December 3rd.
Sure. Great. Okay, they'll take us up on December the 3rd. Okay, so we'll move on to discussion items, urban agriculture.
And Chairman, at this point, we don't have anything new to add due to some scheduling conflicts in there. Be open to any additional discussions. We do have an attendee that wanted to comment about that earlier on in there. And
why don't we hear from
okay. Ms. Lee?
Oh, wow, I can see myself. Hi, good evening, Chair, or Commissioner, I should say. Sorry, the last meeting I went to was the City Council. Thank you for
sticking with us.
Yes, of course. Thank you for having me on a Friday Eve. I just had some questions about the new items of the chickens and the roosters. Well, more so the chickens. So I have chickens. My name's Jane Lee, in case I should repeat myself from earlier. I live at 9366 Old Bonham Road. I've had chickens for about 1 to 2 years, so I'm relatively new. But my concern was that I have over 6 hens, but they aren't full-size hens, or they're not standard. So I think when you think of the standard chicken, you think of the mini dinosaurs that are about 5-6 pounds, and mine are actually a different breed that are about 1.5 pounds at their heaviest, especially all the ones that I have. So I was just wondering if we do a limit of 6 hens per household, particularly ones that already have chickens, would that still apply to bantams? as they're called. They're kind of like mini chickens. They're about a third to half the size smaller of standard sized chickens. And I know this applies to agricultural, like the raising of them for eggs. The eggs of these small chickens are about, I think I need about 2 or 3. So my parents still, I have a bunch of freeloaders right now because of the season. So my concern is also that with families that have 6 standard sized chickens during molt season, usually that's in the fall, and in the winter, they'll lay less eggs. So if it's only 6 chickens and you have a house, I mean, I live with 4 other people, we have 5 people. My parents still go and buy grocery eggs, and I feel like, you know, traders, but it's fine. We have big freeloaders right now. So I was just wondering, how would that affect families that already have chickens, especially if they have more than 6? And how would you address families that perhaps want a different breed that aren't as large and maybe don't lay as frequently?
This is Richard. May I address that quickly?
Do I need to okay that? Yes, go ahead.
No.
Okay, I was like, yes.
Ms. Wagner does. You can too. So two things. One, I think this dovetails nicely with a comment that I had about the language, and we obviously that's been deferred, but I'll just address your point quickly. My view is that there will be some kind of grandfathering provision so that those members of the community that already have chickens would not be required to necessarily get rid of their pets, but rather would simply not be required to be able to acquire more and go above that 6 again. So that's number one. Is nothing's been finalized, but I suspect there will be some kind of grandfathering provision in there, because in my experience, anytime there aren't grandfather provisions, people get very angry. So that's number one, point one. Point two, my understanding, and Carlos perhaps can comment on this also, is that these are the 6 count is the allowance that you can have without seeking permission from Carlos or whomever to get more. So there are provisions for extenuating circumstances that would allow you to apply for more, I believe. And perhaps one example of this would be, as you say, the smaller variety of chickens that you have perhaps could provide a basis for that. But Carlos, maybe you could comment on that. I don't have a copy of the language in front of me. Am I correct that the way it's proposed right now, that people would be able to petition to get a larger number than 6?
Correct. That's been some of the discussion that the commission has. I have to look specifically back at the current language to determine that provision was in there, but I think that was the direction we were going.
Great, thank you. Well, I don't want to take up anyone else's time on Friday Eve. So if it's my understanding that this has been deferred to the next meeting at December 3rd.
I believe that's correct.
That is correct.
Great, thank you. I will see you all then.
And I'll note at our next meeting on the 3rd, I have confirmed with Mr. Martin, and he will be in attendance at that meeting, Mr. Martin being our city attorney, to answer and discuss any additional questions. It's our goal to have a full draft set out, hopefully that Monday before the meeting. I apologize, we kind of fell behind on this. And same with stormwater, if we can defer discussion given the time on there. Our primary focus has been on those other petitions that have been submitted. But we'll be glad to answer any specific questions. Regarding stormwater, again, on the city's channel on YouTube, there's a great Zoom with the mayor, with one of Missouri Botanical Gardens experts, Jonathan, the name kind of, I forgot the name, but the full recording is on there regarding rainscaping. It was well attended, and I've heard kudos on the presentation, and thank you to Jonathan for getting that coordinated in there. The gentleman's name again, Jonathan, was
Rob Kennedy with the Missouri Botanical Garden Arkway Center.
Great. Okay. So we're going to defer stormwater management as well.
I would recommend, yes, would be my recommendation.
And that takes us to other business.
All right.
And the
back to-
first item was meeting minutes, and I don't believe we had any this
No,
time.
no minutes were prepared for this.
And we'll
this
move
segment.
on to reports, and Carlos, report
Just,
from the planning director.
Couple of items in there. The next week's council meeting on the 24th is canceled due to the Thanksgiving holiday season. And then their scheduled work session, I believe, is December 1st, and their December meetings are the 8th and the 22nd, with, of course, the 22nd. It's probably traditionally has been canceled in there. For the commission, our next meetings are the 3rd and 17th. And for the month of January, we're looking at the 7th and the 21st. I think in regards to petitions that have been submitted for the second meeting in December, which is generally when we introduce new items, there is a new home on Crosswinds and a pool that's proposed on Heather Hill. At the December meeting, for sure, we'll continue discussions regarding the preliminary plat for Birdie Lane. And then, of course, we'll have Mr. Martin regarding the urban agriculture, and then continued discussion on the stormwater management. Regarding events, I'll start with COVID-19. Again, we have a new county public health order. And that being said, we are limiting and access into the city center for purposes to protect personnel and also individuals seeking to do business with the city. We did something similar in there. What we're trying to do is try to minimize as much overlapping and keep, especially like on my end, inspectors from being there at the same time. That being said, I believe the lobby area will be proposed to be closed. We will still allow for meetings by inspection only, but we'll conduct most permitting through email. We'll also be doing transactions, through electronically, through credit cards. We will continue to do all building inspections. We will continue to do all housing inspections for properties for sale or change of ownership, as long as they're vacant. But we will limit rental occupancies. When the same tenant is in there, we're going to extend any deadline an additional 30 days, at least to see how the health orders come along in there. The intent is not to do it. It's just to kind of push it out a little bit to see if the impacts improve. We are doing, of course, mandatory mask policies in our facility. We've also, again, have engaged with our various businesses on there. The most recent one is in Chevy's. You can see that they put their outdoor tent area. We kind of expedited the permitting system, and so they could meet yesterday's deadline for the outdoor dining, since there's no more indoor dining in there. Municipal court continues to be done virtually. They had one meeting yesterday. For public works, there is a delay on leaf collections. So if you're north of Old Bonham, you are scheduled to start tomorrow for the second round. If you're south of Old Bonham, which we were supposed to get started this week, that's not going to happen till Monday of next week, weather pending at the earliest. And there, Dillman Road closure, pretty strong possibility that that road will open before Thanksgiving Day. A lot of it being weather pending, and they're moving quite along, and it's pretty impressive if you take a look. It's a great improvement in there. Ashby Road Bridge, again, all we've been noted by the county is by end of year the road is still closed, trying to access Page Avenue to the north. Parks and Recreation, all the restrooms are closed, but primarily for the season. They get winterized during this time of the year, so those have been closed. The playground equipment is still accessible to the public, but there is an approved cleaning and disinfection process that they have to go through that's been approved by county. The community center will also have the same limitations as the city center. Whether closure is the right word or not, I'm not sure. And it does look like these the latest mandates will impact the basketball clinic winter break for those that will be out of school. and the drive-in movie. All those will probably be on pause until we get better improvement in there. Don't forget the 7th annual Turkey Trot. Registration still is ongoing, I believe. They're doing pickups already. And of course, donations are always welcome for the event. The November 10th Zoom with the Mayor is on YouTube on the City of Olivet's channel, which you can also access all the other Zoom with the Mayor's Council meetings and such. And of course, again, Jonathan had Rob Kennedy with the Missouri Botanical Garden discuss rainscaping. We want to reference that. Jonathan's creating a separate site within our department's website that we are putting up all this stormwater information for public access, along with the presentations. And as we move on, and everything else we've seen him put together will be accessible there eventually. The GRG, the Great Rivers Greenway, had a virtual meeting yesterday regarding the Centennial Trail. That is also available online. I urge you to take a look at it. It was they do a really good public outreach and organized job for these meetings, and it's well worth considering. They had, they discussed where they are in the process, where they've engaged, and then the public outreach that's going on, and then took in some public comments. There is a survey that's available, survey results that are now available in there. And it was interesting things, one of the biggest issues that people have with the trail, or with referencing to this trail, is safety. And a lot of times when you think of safety, it's more about, personal safety regarding, being injured, robbery, or anything of that nature. But when they break down their concerns regarding safety, over 50%, the reference to safety is about crossing the street. And the concerns, especially with the proposed crossing at Hilltop and Olive, and a crossing at Dealman, just south of Napoleon. And, for the Greenway to try to address or find best management practices to address a safe crossing of those streets. And that, again, that more people are concerned when they talk about safety on the trail, it's more specifically about safety of crossing the street. So I urge you to take a look at that. It was very interesting and really informative in what they did. Regarding developments, Olive Crossing at I-170, MSD's just about done with that 82nd Street connection. They're going to be boring underneath Olive. And Lindley has just gotten started and moving southward. And once they're completed with the site, in discussions with the developer, I think they're looking, the site's assembled, everything's raised, and hopefully spring would be the full construction will go back in gear. City Center redevelopment area, which is called now the Oliver, is worthwhile looking. The parking structure deck is at its full height. They're still, adding on to it, but it's worth seeing how that starts to look three-dimensionally. And there we look forward for continued improvements on that. They're moving in there, and it's kind of reflective of one of the bright spots in the market right now, and that is multifamily residential. Is a really strong segment in the St. Louis region. Had a discussion with the developer for the Plant Haven Commercial Center. He's kind of been delayed because of COVID and its impacts, but is still committed to the site and continuing on hopefully in spring. Same thing with Easy Storage. They were impacted by COVID. They went off to a slow start, but they own the property. They've made the utility improvements, and they hope to continue and are committed to the site. And Firestone, they still haven't closed on the property, but they're also committed to that site. I was hoping they would close before year's end, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen right away. But they're fully set and moving that along. I think that kind of covers all the developments. I talked to a residential developer yesterday, and he had indicated, and is one of our traditional developers, that he had acquired three additional lots that he's looking to do development. another developer that has two in hand, and then a third that had access to the property. So it's still amazing, you know, that there's still strong confidence in the residential market here and all of that. And I think that kind of covers everything. I'd be glad to answer any questions, Chair, or from the commission.
Anybody have any questions for Carlos? You can't see everybody, but
Trying to get there.
there we go. Okay. Councilperson Waldman, do you have a report for us?
Carlos does a really good job. So my report is, ladies and gentlemen, the current figure raised at turkey trot as of right now has exceeded the $2,500 mark. We're at $2,545. I'd love to see that go up more. Don't know if you're going to run the race. If you're not, consider going on and donating some money. That money will go to the Harvey Kornblum Food Pantry and be able to deal with food and purchases for those that are less fortunate than all of us. And we'll all count our own blessings. Speaking of blessings, y'all have a good, safe, healthy Thanksgiving. We'll be home. Don't know how you'll do your celebrations, but as always, you're much appreciated. Love the conversation tonight. Like how the push and pull goes. You are much appreciated. Take care. Be safe. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Councilman Waldman. Okay. Anybody else have anything?
No.
And with that, we will adjourn.
Thank you all.
Happy
Thank-
Thanksgiving, everyone.
You too.
Everybody.
Thank you,
be
everybody. Have a
safe.
good Thanksgiving.